All right. Well, Craig, we are so pumped to have you on the show today. I mean, how's everything going?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to kick things off with a little bit of rapid fire, true and false. And so you can answer true or true and false with a caveat if you believe there's one necessary.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. So, number one, you and your wife, Maria, were keto before keto was cool.
True. About 23 years for her. So,
Oh.
yeah, been a long time.
Amazing. That's so awesome. Next is kids can't possibly do keto or carnivore.
Completely false. It's amazing. I have this meme that has like a before after kind of thing, and the before is my son eating this beautiful bowl of like Asian dish with protein and bright vegetables in it, and it says, "Is keto safe for kids?" And then below it is this typical kid with a rainbow of sugar and cereal, and just let them be kids. Like this is normal, and this is not normal. Apparently, it's crazy.
Oh, we're going to definitely deep dive into that one in just a little bit. We recently had an episode that we did with our boys, and which was awesome getting their perspective on the way that they are fed.
Great.
So, anyway, number three, you and Maria have a small side gig writing cookbooks.
Just a couple. Yeah, I mean, like all these. Yeah, over 20 now. So
Amazing. Number four, you're actually the better cook out of the two of you.
that's false. Yeah, is an absolute whiz in the kitchen. She can whip stuff up. Just she rarely pulls out a recipe and rarely measures. It's just like intuitive and it's crazy.
That's amazing. All right, number five, we got fat bombs, bulletproof coffee, and high fiber foods are great keto tools for fat loss.
False on all those points. We
And
can
then
go.
finally, protein is the key macronutrient when trying to lose fat.
I would say protein is key macronutrient for losing weight, for health, for longevity, for all of it.
Awesome.
All righty. Well, let's start off by just getting a little bit into your background. I mean, how did you and Maria arrive in this keto carnivore space?
Yeah, it goes all the way back to when we met. She was just entering college, and she was having struggles her whole life with PCOS, with acid reflux, with digestive issues. She had extra weight she could not get rid of, even though she's got all the way to running marathons, and following the healthy whole grains and low fat, whatever everybody's told to eat. And she still had all these health issues. She couldn't lose the weight, and she went to college for nutrition and exercise physiology because she wanted to understand it better. Why was this not working for her? And they basically taught her the same stuff, food pyramid, all that. It's like, okay, this can't be right. And she went to the doctor because she had PCOS and these other issues, and basically the doctor said, those are the cards you're dealt. And genetics, you can't do anything about it. And here's like 3 prescriptions to deal with depression and the acid reflux and all this. And the same week, our dog started losing patches of its hair. So we took it into the vet, and the first thing the vet said was, "What are you feeding it?" And it was like a light bulb moment for her. The doctor never asked her what she ate, and yet handed out these prescriptions and sent her off saying, these are the cards you're dealt." So she just started diving in on her own to study and fix herself. And every book, every study, everything she'd get her hands on, she would read. And as she implemented these low carb approach and keto approach on herself, PCOS reversed, her acid reflux went away. Even though she stopped running marathons, the extra weight was gone. So people, of course, wanted to know what she was doing, and that's kind of how it all snowballed into all this, helping others. Myself, it took me a little longer. I have an electrical engineering degree, and I was working in electrical engineering and then product management, actually in healthcare, like MRI imaging machines. So I was in kind of the healthcare space a bit, but as an engineer. And 5-6 years after her, through a number of reasons, I came around to eat full time this way too. I just liked how I felt better. I didn't have any health issues, so it wasn't as pressing of a need. I got these German roots, and I brewed my own beer, and I just a little stubborn, when it came to that. But 5, 6 years later, so I don't know, 18 years ago for me, I started eating this way all the time, and I felt great. Eventually, it came around to where when she started writing books, and our business started to grow, and I was doing all the background of the business, like keeping our website running and all that kind of stuff. It just made sense for me to step away and put my efforts into this business. And, so past 10, 12 years, I've been doing nothing but studying biology and nutrition myself.
Well, what's awesome though is that, it's clear to us from following you both that it's not just a business. I mean, this is how you guys live. Your family lives this way, which was why we did our true and false question around kids and eating keto and carnivore, because our audience are predominantly parents and they have kids who are struggling with a multitude of issues, which, because of Corey Beth's background in teaching, she came to recognize in studying nutrition that so many of the issues kids deal with are related specifically to what we are feeding them. And parents are just now starting to learn and understand how much of a role nutrition plays. So can we just talk a little bit about your kids and their diets?
Absolutely. Our kids, we adopted them from Ethiopia 11 years or 12 years ago now. Yeah, 12 and a half years ago now. And they came to us at 1 and 2 years old. Nutrition was a challenge in Ethiopia in the orphanage. And so they arrived barely registering on the height and weight charts, like 2%, right at the bottom, barely even on the chart. And we just started feeding them what we eat. I mean, it just seems like people now, like, you feed them keto. No, we fed them meat and low carb vegetables. Like, we weren't keto. The name keto just gets kind of a bad name and at times and whatnot. The way we've always approached it is it's a whole foods approach. It's prioritizing protein. It's getting healthy animal proteins and healthy low carb vegetables together as a lifestyle. And so our son we were very blessed to have someone pump for us, so we had some breast milk for him when he came home. But we immediately started adding some solid foods. He was a little over a year old, and we were adding first solid foods were like bone marrow and little egg yolk and salmon that would break up into nice small pieces for him to just use his hands and pick up the pieces and that kind of stuff. And both of them, they just ate what we ate, just maybe a little different form, hamburger ground up, fine or something. Within a year, they were at 50% on the height weight charts. And after 2 years, they were 75% or something, and they've been there ever since. The idea that kids need carbs to grow they need amino acids, they need protein to grow.
It is awesome. I mean, I'm so inspired. I come from a special education teaching background. I was a teacher for 7 years, and that is the reason I left the classroom, seeing our students be fed animal crackers and apple juice and then misbehaving and then being punished. I'm like, something is so wrong here. What do you think it was for you and Maria that you didn't fall into that typical trap a lot of people do, where they're like, well, they need goldfish or they need Chips Ahoy cookies and Oreos? Like, was it your own experience or was it something else that really kept you from that?
It was a combination of our own experience and our education on it. We, at that point, Maria had been in this for 10 plus years, and seeing clients and seeing people what changed in their health when they would change their diets. And you talk about the trap that people get into. It's psychologically, it just doesn't make any sense for people to invest so much time and money into kids' schooling and education, into sports and activities, and then not spend any time or money into educating them on nutrition and what they're putting in their body. And guess what? When they're 50 years old and they've got these health issues, or 30 or 40 years old, they're going to really wish they knew how to eat right, because they're going to be miserable with these health issues. And so one of the best gifts you can give them, in addition to setting up with social environments like sports and giving them the tools to succeed as an adult with education, giving them the tools to be a healthy adult is just as important to me. And yet we do basically zero of it with our kids. We just throw food in front of them, whatever they want, and just let them be kids, right? Well, guess what? When they turn 18, they don't magically, oh, okay, now I know how to eat healthy, right? And they go off. Like, it's an education process, just like any other part of their education, that has to be a lifelong process.
True.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because, I think that some people listening to this or watching it on YouTube might say, well, it was easy for you guys. You were already eating this way, and you just brought these kids in when they were young and introduced them. And you, like us, work with people who are trying to make this transition themselves, and then also have to make this transition with their families, or at least attempt to. So what are some of the challenges that you guys typically observe?
Yes, and to some extent, because they were so young, yeah, it was easy and we already had our house, made over to this way of eating. And yeah, it was, for us, it was easy to just feed them, the whole foods we had, just getting in a form that they can handle. But I would say to, vast majority of parents, if your kid's under 16 years old, it's hard for them to go to the store and buy food and come home with it and put it in the shelves. Like, if your 6-year-old is not shopping, so they're going to eat what's in the house. And so while it might be a tough transition for sure, and that's why we have, like our sugar-free kids book. It's one of the reasons we wrote it, is because we wanted to help parents transition. And so we put a lot of foods in there that mimic some of the things kids might be used to, like chicken nuggets and, but just using different ingredients to make it healthier. And so that's, transitioning can definitely be difficult, but if you have tools like recipes like this, it can make it easier.
That's great.
And I would say it is important to make over the house, get the junk out of the house.
Well, I want to go there actually. Like, what would be your best advice? Because I know you guys have coaching groups and private groups, you do a lot of that. What would be your best advice for someone listening who's maybe stuck in the goldfish and, Capri Sun trap? What would be the first thing that they should do with young kids under 18?
Obviously, once they get a little older, it gets really tough when they're out of the house. You can't but that's where the education comes. Education is so key to make them understand what that food is doing to them, what it does to their body, how it makes them feel, reflecting when they go to a friend's house and have junk. Oh, I got a stomachache when I come home. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, this is why we don't eat that. The education. But, at home, I have yet to hear of a kid that starved to death because they want to eat their hamburger without a bun, right? Like, you can make food good, tasty, delicious, and just have healthy ingredients. I mean, nobody in the household, not the kids, not the adults, need any of that processed junk. They don't need the cereal, they don't need the candy, the sugar, none of it. So get it out of the house, and that's going to go a long way.
Totally agree that the first step really is elimination. And then I think that your point, that finding the things that mimic the foods that they are accustomed to eating, or that they enjoy the most, and then being able to introduce it that way is like a nice segue for a lot of kids and families in general. With that said, though, regarding the cookbooks, like, how did that come about with you guys? Like, now having 20 plus cookbooks around keto and carnivore and what have you.
Yeah, actually, it originates from our sons, actually. So what happened was, we've had them home now over 12 years, but 4-5 years before that, we started the adoption process. Then in 2007, the big downturn, I lost my job, and we had to kind of put the adoption on hold. And that was really tough for, us emotionally, and everything had been so long, and that we tried and, went through the process to bring them home. And so somebody said to Maria, you've got all these great recipes and you work with these clients, and why don't you make a cookbook that you can sell to fund the adoption? And so that's what we did. That was our first book, was to fund our adoption. And it worked, and it's, we sold it, and I got a new job, and we were able to continue the process of adopting and not have to stop it completely. And we brought home our boys, but that led into published books and just snowballed. And now the Sugar-Free Kids book, Holly Berry wrote the forward to it, so it's kind of surreal.
Awesome.
That's great. With that being said, I wanted to just touch on one more thing around all of that. So you guys have made, though, a transition, it seems, as of late, where you went from very, I'm going to say, very traditional keto, where now you've kind of fallen more into the carnivore space. And a lot of your books, though, too, it's not just the recipes. I mean, it really is educating people on why these approaches. So let's talk a little bit about your transition as to why you went from more that keto route, which could include, again, those high fiber foods and fat bombs and bulletproof coffee, to what you're doing now.
It's been kind of an up and down evolution, actually. You go back, 15, 16 years, and our approach was very much like it is today. Prioritizing protein, using fat as a dial that you adjust based on your goals. And it was only for a year or two in there where the whole keto trend started to happen. Like, I don't know, 10 years ago now, or 9 years ago, where it really keto started to pick up, that we kind of got influenced from others and everything into, no, you got to moderate protein and get lots of fat. And we kind of went down that route, and our first published book was kind of in that realm. And we just found out, after a year or so of doing that, it just didn't work as well. And then, more research that we did and understood about protein itself. That's one of the main reasons in our book, Keto, the Complete Guide, which is all about the science and understanding of nutrition of, ketogenic diets and humans in general. I put a whole chapter in there of keto myths. And it was the first book I co-authored with Maria. I did half of it. She did the other half. And the keto myths were things like fat bombs and things like you have to eat high fat to be keto, and addressing all these things that we had kind of understood now that, no, that's wrong. Let's go back to our roots. Let's go back to what was working so well, and, prioritizing protein, getting, a proper amount for your lean mass, and adjusting the fat based on the goals. And for us, being keto is, as far as carnivore and all that goes, keto for us is primarily burning fat as your fuel instead of glucose. You can do that and be in that place without hardly any ketones in your blood. Like blood ketones aren't a measure of whether you're doing that or not. And from a little bit into the biology, when you're actually ketogenic and very much fat adapted, burning fat as your primary fuel, you're not actually burning ketones. You're burning free fatty acids directly in your cells, which is kind of the precursor to ketones, right? So you burn the fat directly in your cells. Some of the fat, the free fatty acids, can go into the liver and get turned into ketones for your brain, and certain, it can't cross the blood-brain barrier, so it has to be turned into ketones. But most of it's off of fat directly. And so that blood ketone level, we're kind of agnostic to that. We don't really care about that, because that's not going to correlate to any goals or any health improvements, unless, if you've got certain brain disorders like Alzheimer's, things where you need the elevated ketones for those conditions. But other than that, carnivore to us is just keto without plants. I mean, it's just, like a subset, and we're kind of agnostic whether you are keto, carnivore, or anywhere in between, really.
I was going to say, I love that. And I just listened to an interview that you and Maria had done, even about some of the nuts, because in that keto realm, we can use almond flour, and people will eat things like pistachios or cashews. And I would say one of the biggest ahas I've had now, being almost 6 months carnivore, is those things actually give me headaches. And I don't think I would have recognized that otherwise. So can you touch on that a little bit? Why maybe to move away from some of the nuts?
Yeah, going way back, we've always told clients, and this is a little bit separate reason, but if you want the best weight loss results, you want to be 100% dairy and nut free. And that's going to help you with weight loss. Dairy and nuts are two of the foods that you just overeat so easily. Like I remember seeing a picture out there, it's like two hands sticking out, and they have a pile of nuts in each hand. It looks like the one pile has maybe 2 or 3 more nuts in it. Hardly looks any bigger, but it's twice the calories. Like they're so energy dense, and it's so easy to overdo, when you grab a handful. And dairy is one of the other ones. It's just too easy to overeat and overdo. That's a little bit separate issue what you're talking about. And I would say the one thing that we have evolved away from is using almond flours and those kind of things. And it's primarily due to the oxalates that are in it. All plants have anti-nutrients, which are compounds that your body doesn't want or need and can be harmful to the body. So it's got to detox them. And one of the more harmful ones is oxalates. And oxalates are like these tiny little crystals, like shards, like spiky crystals that are in all nuts and seeds. They're in dark leafy greens like kale, spinach. They're also in potatoes and things, that kiwi. They're in high amounts in those foods. And so one of the things with keto is, a lot of people jump into the like almond flour, everything, and baked goods and everything. And you can get a lot of oxalates that can cause other issues. And so we really do moderate and limit the almond flours now.
It's ultimately why people see all of these autoimmune symptoms pop up when they make the switch from, say, eating a standard American diet, which we know is the worst possible diet a human being could possibly be subjected to. But then they go to keto and maybe they see some initial success because they're cutting out some of the processed foods. But as you say, in that evolution, it's, I just want a taste of the old days. And what things can I find that are reminiscent of it? And that's where we do find a lot of these oxalate laden foods or compounds that are utilized to make some of these recipes that we're coming up with. And that is at the heart of the issue with keto, I feel, is that so many people are reliant upon those things which they view as treats.
Yep.
And those treats, it's the same issue that you see also with the gluten-free, group. It's I can't eat gluten. It's like, yeah, but you eat sugar-laden gluten-free cookies. Like, how is that any better?
Yeah. And the gluten-free cookies probably using tapioca starch or rice flour, which is even higher on the glycemic index than flour. So it's even worse. And that's, if it's your birthday and you want a almond flour cake, go for it, right? If it's a Thursday and you want to, like, every Thursday or every day you have to have a treat, let's go back to treating sugar and treats the way we used to, right? Like, do you know the TV series Little House on the Prairie? I used to watch that when I was young. I remember a scene on there. It was Christmas, and they each got a penny to go to the what do you call it, the general store, and get one piece of candy. That was one of their Christmas presents, right? One piece of candy at Christmas. That's it. I mean, we have come to this world where candy is just daily, ubiquitous, everywhere, in schools, in everywhere. And I think we got to go back to, it's a special treat. Even if it's a keto version, it's a special treat, and you do it that way.
I remember that's how my grandparents treated it. I'd go over to grandma's house quite frequently, and it was, if you were going to have a treat, you could have a cookie or maybe two. And, sugar was not treated as something that you should be consuming on a daily basis. It literally was just that. And now today, it's not even just that, where we eat it in excess. It's just that it's pumped into everything. I mean, you pump it into every food because you're trying to lower the fat content of the food. So how do you make it tasty? You make it tasty with sugar. And if we're going to eliminate sugar, then let's just add in seed oils. And, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse.
It's terrible. Literally the worst diet you can do is standard American diet. I mean, that's why, even with, going vegan or whatever, anything you go to for, it's whole foods based from the standard American diet, you're going to see improvements because you're starting from basically the worst place, right? But, one of the things that we've done is, coconut flour doesn't have as much of the oxalates and things. So we've been, if we're going to do something, we'll do it more with that. Or, Maria lately has been coming up with some really amazing bread and treats that use egg whites. Like her bread that is made out of egg whites with some egg white protein powder. And she's also doing some with this the Equip beef protein powder. You get a nice complete protein in there with with your cake or your dessert. I mean, that's just a win-win for that.
Well, and I know she's not here today with us, but how does she dream up these recipes? And maybe from your vantage point or perspective, is it just this chaotic awesomeness in the kitchen, or is she very meticulous about how she comes up with them?
It's definitely the former. She's chaotic. She's very lucky that I grew up at, I think I was 13 or 14 when I got my first job part-time after school. I'd go help clean. I cleaned the bank. We cleaned different places in my hometown. This cleaning crew called Dirt Fighters. And I've always had that kind of in me since, and it's a good thing because it's a little bit of chaos in the kitchen when she's in there, but it's so intuitive for her. Like she'll just know that, I need, for texture as she's cooking, she'll know she needs more of this or that. And I mean, it's just so intuitive for her now because she's done it for so long. Like she just knows what ingredient would help and how much. And it's a little bit of organized chaos, but it's because she's so intuitive about the ingredients. She doesn't need, to write down it was, 0.5 teaspoons of this or whatever. She just figures it out and then puts together the recipes after and has her recipe testers test it to make sure that she got the numbers right.
Does have a favorite family recipe or like a go-to that you must have every single week?
Oh, it'd definitely be our lasagna. That's one too, like you said, finding alternatives to family favorites. If your family likes a lasagna, which growing up, I love my mom's lasagna. It was always a favorite dish that she made. All you got to do is change one thing, really, and that's take the noodles out. And she came up with putting like thinly shaved deli chicken breast. The deli chicken breast. Use that instead of noodles, and just do everything else pretty much the same. And it's great. It's a great keto meal at that point. What's great about that too for families is we batch cook that all the time. So we'll make, 3 pans of it, throw it in the freezer. And, lasagna is one of those things that left over is almost better, like the flavors meld. So yeah, it's a great way to get a bunch of stuff in the freezer or fridge for easy, quick meals.
Love that.
This is great because this is the practical stuff that I know people are looking for, because you hear it all the time too. I am certain in all the coaching that you guys do is the common statement is this is just so hard. It's so hard. And it's because we're so accustomed or conditioned to the way that we've always done things or the way our parents did things, right? That's usually the case, is we're passed on what, the formers did. And now we're trying to navigate, okay, how do I get out of this? Yeah. And I think keeping that close connection where there is still some of the old built into what you're doing in the new. And then it's just that recognition of, hey, here are the swaps that you have to make. It's as simple as that. And that's also why I'm going to encourage everybody who's listening right now. I mean, go and find Maria and Craig's cookbooks, because this is going to be such a valuable tool if you are struggling to make that transition. And especially if you are the type who you just love being in the kitchen. I always love when a new client comes in and they're a cook or a baker. And like, but I just love doing this. It's like, but there's another way you could do it, right? And I'm sure you guys have seen that a million times over.
And the contrary to that, where people don't cook at all, but then find cooking as they go to this lifestyle. And we've seen a lot of people like that too, where they grow into a love of cooking, and knowing what they're putting in their food and everything, and tasting the results. And, a lot of people too, if it's just a little bit of extra planning, a little bit of extra, making extra time on Sunday to batch cook for the week, like the lasagnas or whatever, that just simplifies the week so much because you got so many meals already set. Now you can, work on the rest, and those things can be really helpful to plan and transition.
That's so good. Now, in your experience, common objection that we'll get from either clients in our fitness studios or just people online is that this way of eating is so expensive. In fact, a recent comment on one of my videos was, my stomach says yes, but my wallet says no. Have you seen a difference in your grocery bill, or has it been the same or maybe even a bit cheaper? What's your experience?
So honestly, I mean, there's a lot of variability in this for where they're coming from. Somebody's on like scraping to make ends meet and they're eating, ramen noodles and, whatever they can afford from the, okay, yeah, it's, that's going to be a tough situation, but there are ways to do it. Like when we adopted our boys, we had some tough times, and, we did things like, eggs, they're back down in price finally, but eggs are pretty cheap, complete protein with lots of vitamins and minerals in it. And what we would do to make the beef go further is we'd make a big batch of like chili and add eggs in and cook them in, and that would bulk it up more, add more protein, add make it go further for the dollar. There's things like that you can do, but I would say the average person, going from processed foods and packaged cereals and whatever, and maybe eating out Taco Bell and whatever, you come to this, you're going to save money. I'd say 9 times out of 10 you're going to say, we've had people that do an honest accounting of the before and after budget for food, and it's down because you're, number one, you're eating very nutrient dense food. So the animal proteins that they keep you full longer. You're not eating the chips constantly because you're always hungry, or the crackers, the foods, and so you eat less, but it's more nutrient dense. And a lot of people, they'll even transition to just 2 meals a day, because they're just not hungry as much. And so that less volume of food really helps with cost too.
I'll just say, in our personal observation, when we started going more of the carnivore route, I came to the realization that the only reason why we were really going out to eat, or when we did, was to fill up on things like steak, which we were not making at home. She was not making it home. I should have taken more control as the man of the house and just demanded that we had more steaks around, and I'd be out there grilling.
Listen, I just didn't like cooking steak. There was just something about red meat for that period of time. And again, my past, I was a vegetarian for about 2 years. It just grossed me out. But I think now, realizing how simple and easy ground beef, burgers, sliders, and steak are to cook, it's amazing. So yes.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
I'm happy I could pull you over to this side.
There you go.
But it's amazing though. Like, we don't go out to eat now. I mean, unless we're just really trying to go out to get away from the kids, or it's like one of those late nights at lacrosse practice, and we just have nothing at home.
Yeah.
But it really was like, when we were going out to eat, it was I always wanted a steak when I went out to eat, but now I eat ribeyes about 3 or 4 nights a week as it is, or we're going to have it for lunch after this is over. And I actually feel like we make it better at home.
Yeah.
And it's less expensive. And then, like, that bill on not going out to eat, I mean, for an average New York family, I'll say, is quite easily $500 a month just going out to eat. That's not even considering your grocery bill.
Exactly. And Maria says that all the time too, is when we travel, we do our best and we find good food. It is always someplace, they're always gonna have proteins you can pick and all that. But she's always like so happy to get home and make my steak the way I like it. And she makes this little truffle sauce that she loves, and she puts it on there. She loves, she very much prefers her food at home. Yeah.
It's funny too, is that when we're ordering the food at a restaurant, I'm realizing I'm telling them, I don't want the vegetables, I don't want the potatoes, I don't want the bread, I don't want any of that. So now I'm paying $50 for this one piece of steak, where I could have eaten 2 or 3 of them at home for the same price. So
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, speaking about proteins, talk to everybody who's listening a little bit about protein sparing modified fasts. So this is something that I've seen that you guys have gotten into. We've utilized it in the past with some clients, and I'm going to have a follow-up question about that with you. But give everybody who's listening, first time, never heard of PSMF. What is it? What is it for?
Yeah, this is another thing that goes way back for us. 15 years ago, Maria she called them pure protein days. And she just knew that, protein was the key and it really helped the weight loss. And so if somebody was stalled or, want to speed up their weight loss, add a pure protein day. It's a day of basically pure protein, no carbs, very little fat, maybe 30 grams of fat, and the rest just you're hitting your protein goal for the day. And it's great for speeding up weight loss because your body has to get energy from somewhere. And if it's not coming in the diet, so, protein isn't really energy. Protein is building blocks for the body, and it's vitamins and minerals. It's not really used as energy unless there's no other energy available. And by no other energy available, I'm not talking in the diet. I'm talking about in the diet and on the body. So if you're 100 pounds overweight, you have a lot of energy available. It's right there stored. The body can use it. If you're at goal weight, you don't want to do protein sparing modified fast because it's a weight loss tool. And if you did, it would really suck because you don't have any energy to pull off the body, not much, there's is a low amount. And if you don't have any in the diet, now you're going to be hungry and it's going to be miserable. But for weight loss, it's a great tool. It's an amazing tool for speeding up results, speeding up weight loss, breaking stalls. It's really great. We do, again, obviously not applicable for kids, not applicable for, somebody who's pregnant or breastfeeding. We wouldn't do it in those cases. The way you look at it, the protein sparing modified fast, it's the clinical term. Pure protein is probably better anyway, but protein sparing means spare the protein on your body, not in the diet. So people get confused about that. Modified fast. So they modify a water fast. A water fast is where you eat nothing and just drink water for 2, 3, 4 days. Okay. But the problem with that is you lose muscle. And it's been shown in studies time after time that you lose muscle when you water fast. Well, they wanted to modify a fast to spare protein sparing modified fast. So it's basically mimicking a water fast from the energy standpoint, but getting enough protein so you don't lose the muscle. So and muscle is so important. We all want to preserve muscle. I like to think of muscle as sort of a down payment on your future strength, because as we all get older, there's something called leucine curve shift where you actually need more protein just to maintain your muscle. And it's so much easier to lose your muscle as you get older. And so if you have more now, losing some, you can still stay vital and strong.
I can't agree more, because that's been my perspective for a long time, is that I've used exactly the same terms. Like, this is insurance. You building muscle is an insurance policy. But I think one thing that you touched on there, which is worth people honing in on, is this idea that as we're getting older, our protein needs actually increase.
Yes.
Which, if we observe elderly population, that is not the first thing that they're doing when they wake up in the morning. It's rarely, hey, let me cook my eggs and my bacon and make sure I have enough of it. It's typically, let me have my oatmeal, my bowl of cereal, things like that. So let's go there for a minute, talking again more about the importance of protein, and especially in that aging population.
Yeah, I think on average, older people actually eat less protein than younger, and that's the opposite direction it needs to be. The amino acid that's primarily responsible for triggering muscle protein synthesis for building and repairing muscle is leucine. Leucine is like almost like a signaling molecule to say, yep, we're getting a complete protein here. We can build muscle and start building muscle. There's a threshold. If you get a certain amount of protein, your body says, okay, we're going to start building. It's like a threshold point if you get enough leucine. When you get older, that curve shifts. And so you need even more to get to that threshold level. And so you need even more complete proteins just to start the process of building and repairing muscle. So, if it's like 30 grams now, it might be 40 grams of complete protein when you're older to get to that level. And so it becomes much more important to prioritize protein as you get older.
In that instance too, then people would maybe considering, maybe if it is a person who intermittent fasts, opening up that feeding window, or maybe not intermittent fasting at all, because I know that we personally seen that is one of the drawbacks of following an OMAD or a 2 meal per day type of eating style, is that you're oftentimes going to undercut yourself with respect to protein. And especially we see this with women who, protein is not the first thing that they're thinking about consuming, and it doesn't take a lot of it to turn off the signals that say, or I should say, turn on the signals that say we're good with protein.
Yeah.
And so then they wind up under eating. And I found that the only way for us to combat that oftentimes is to say, hey, let's abandon this concept of a feeding window. Or would you agree that the closer one gets to that carnivore primal end of the spectrum, the less necessary things like intermittent fasting become?
Yes, I agree. 100%. My wife actually had a personal experience with this, I don't know, 6, 8 years ago. She kind of got into the lion and sort of 1 meal a day thing, and she ended up losing some muscle. And, she's now trying to build that back. It's so hard to get enough protein in 1 meal. You get full, you just can't eat anymore. And so I think intermittent fasting has its place. It's a good tool, especially for people that, are snackers and mindless eaters. If you can restrict your window and maybe eat only in 6 hours or something, say this is the window, and now, shut down the kitchen after that, no calories, can be really helpful, for weight loss and everything. But yeah, if you're not hitting your protein goal, I don't care if it's 4 meals a day, you need to hit your protein goal. And, that, especially as you get older. And so that definitely trumps any intermittent fasting for me.
Yeah, and I think this becomes the value in having a guide, someone to help you along this journey, because I think what we all strive for is we want that one answer, that one thing that we have to do for the rest of our lives, and make it really easy, not realizing, I mean, Maria's scenario is a perfect example of this, in that maybe going lion diet initially was great because it produced X result, but then there was also Y consequence of it. And then realizing that, okay, now once we've reached this point, we have to transition. And I know through our bodybuilding experience too, when we were competing, 13 plus years ago, it was recognizing that, hey, this is okay for this period of time, but you can't keep doing it. And I feel like that's one of the issues that people are going to run into following any type of nutrition strategy, is that there is no one way, and there's all these different transitions. And you described that earlier as well with you guys, and I'm sure you see that with a lot of clients.
Yeah, I mean, you always got to be learning and adjusting based on your body and what's going on. Another trap that people get into a lot is the scale itself. We get this all the time, where I got 10 more pounds to get to my goal weight, and this number on the scale, right? And it's like, well, maybe that's not your number anymore. Like, maybe you've gained some muscle, and that's the thing that, yeah, losing muscle will make the scale go down, and that'll seem like a good thing because you're losing weight, right? But it's not. It's not a good thing. And OMAD will do that. You'll start seeing some loss, but is some of that lost muscle? And that's the thing you got to avoid.
I'm going to take a left turn here for a moment. I'm going to talk to you about something that is personal to you, but actually it is to me as well. Can we talk about Lyme disease for a moment?
Ah, yes.
Because you've had quite an experience. I actually also had contracted Lyme, and I think though the only difference in our two stories is that I kind of caught mine relatively early on, but you've been on quite a journey. So can you share that story with us?
Yeah. Like I originally said, 18 or whatever years ago, when I went full keto, I didn't have any health issues. And so it wasn't a pressing need, but just felt better when I ate that way. So I committed to it. I don't know, 8, 9 years ago, I started getting this pain in my back. Initially, I didn't think anything of it because I had a football injury from high school. I got a damaged disc in my low back, and it would, slip, and I'd get shooting pains occasionally in my leg and stuff. And so I thought maybe something related to that. But over the years, went up my back slowly into my shoulders, into my neck. And it got to the point, 5, 6, 6, actually more than 6, time flies, 6, 7 years ago, I got to the point where I couldn't throw a football as far as my son, who was, I don't know, 6 at the time, 7. It was just the mobility and the pain was just terrible. So I had to figure out what was going on. I went in and got a bunch of tests done, and one of the things that just made sense was Lyme. So I got the standard Western blot Lyme test at my traditional doctor, and it said I was negative. Of course, now I know about 80% of those are false negatives. You really have it, but the Western blot Lyme test says you don't. So I went another couple of years trying to figure out what the heck was wrong with myself. And I just got to the point where I'm like, okay, I just can't do this anymore. There's something seriously wrong. And so I went into, granted, this is probably, I don't know, 6, 7 years after symptoms started. I went in and to a functional doctor that we knew here locally, and I gave her a list of tests I wanted done because I knew enough about nutrition and the body and everything at that point. I was like, if there's something going on here, we're going to see it here in these tests. And pretty much everything came back normal, except for 2 things. My red blood cell count was really low. I was anemic, which, at that point I was carnivore, eating nothing but red meat, and, organ meat and all that kind of stuff, loaded with iron and whatnot. And my CRP, which, we want clients to be like 2 or 1, was 50. And so I'm like, okay, well, there's something going on here. And right around the same time, a friend of ours, actually the publisher who also had terrible Lyme disease case, said, you need a different test. There's an IGeneX Lyme test that tests more of the bands, and it's much better at seeing if you actually have it. And that came back positive, that I had Lyme all those years. And so I went, strict carnivore at that point, I don't know, 6 years ago, because it does help with the pain. And I've gone down the road of every protocol known to man for Lyme disease, and almost none of it really had significant effect. My current situation is, I think I've kind of figured out where I'm at now. At least I know what happened, is that Lyme disease triggered chronic inflammatory response syndrome, CIRS. And that's where your body, it's kind of like long COVID, where people's immune system just don't shut off. They just keep fighting, and they get these extended symptoms. Chronic Lyme is kind of similar. Some people, it just doesn't fight it properly, and the immune system just stays on fighting everything. That's a chronic inflammatory response. And so I'm always inflamed. And what happens when that happens? Eventually your body starts fighting good cells. And what's that? That's autoimmune disorder. And that's what I have now, is ankylosing spondylitis, which is an autoimmune disorder that attacks the joints, spine. It's kind of like arthritis for the spine and hips. So most of my vertebrae in my neck are now fused together with calcium. So like, I don't know, 4 of them they're solid calcium. So I can't, turn my head very much. My back isn't totally calcified yet, so I'm working really hard on keeping strength and flexibility in that. But yeah, it sucks. It's also a lesson that diet can't fix everything. I will say that being keto for as long as I was a blessing and a curse in my situation, because I think I would have addressed this much earlier if I wasn't eating this lifestyle the whole time. Like, we get people that come to us with Lyme disease, and just going keto, they feel so much better. Well, I had been keto the whole time. And so it's like, it allowed me to let it go far longer than I should have before addressing it. But yeah, it's, that's part of the thing too in this community, is we get a little caught up in, oh, it fixes everything, autoimmune disorders. And yes, it can be amazing. I mean, I've got a folder of over 10,000 testimonies, and you name the condition, everything from Parkinson's to Alzheimer's, IBS, eczema, everything, huge improvements. But it isn't a cure-all. It's not going to cure cancer. It can help with certain cancers. It doesn't mean it's going to help with all of them. Autoimmune disorders like mine, you can have situations where you definitely can see improvements, but it may not completely end it, if you will.
Yeah, I love that perspective so much. I think that's just so honest, because we do fall into this social media space of influencers that are out there touting, the cure all and the cure all. And I think it's authentic and genuine that there are people like you and Maria that are saying, hey, this can help and this is going to make you feel better to an extent, but it's not the magic pill. There are lots of different pieces to the puzzle, so to speak. So I just appreciate your perspective.
Yeah, this is very much the conversation we had when Judy Cho came on and we talked about SIRS and, in her practice specifically where they're dealing exclusively with carnivores and they're seeing the prevalence of SIRS being that 1 in 4 people, which is just mind blowing. Number one, to think that 1 in 4 people are walking around with this. And I think the sad part of that is so many of them are not in a position where they are eating correctly or living a lifestyle of low inflammation in the first place. And they just feel like this is just my life sentence. This is what happens when you get old, and not realizing that you can make those improvements. And so, though, exactly what you're talking about with regards to making these nutritional and lifestyle changes can make a huge difference in terms of treating the symptoms, but it's not necessarily going to deal with the root cause.
And root causes can be a lot of things. One of the other things we pointed out in our book, Keto, the Complete Guide, I put in there this disease tree, and the leaves, the outcome of disease, whether it's diabetes, cancer, metabolic, autoimmune disorders, the root causes are many for those. It's not just, nutrition's a big piece, but there's not smoking, there's exercise, there's getting vitamin D and proper sunlight exposure, and all of these other inputs that are super important too for that overall health. And that's the thing that we definitely don't do in healthcare, is to look at the whole picture of health. And that includes diet, that includes getting proper sun exposure and vitamin D, that includes exercise and activity, and all of these components that go into health. And even then, sometimes you just there's things that you can't prevent, like Lyme disease. There's nothing in any of the things I just listed that are going to prevent that tick from giving you the Lyme. So then you got to take other measures.
That was my experience too. I felt like I was lucky enough where I was working with a client who actually spotted the bullseye on my neck, and she was a nurse. She was like, "You are," and then sure enough, I remember the exact moment it happened. I was playing golf, and of course, I was in the rough as usual, in that wooded area, and I went for my backswing, and all of a sudden, I felt something hit me, and I slapped it, and then I hit my side, and I slapped my side, and didn't think anything of it. She spots the bullseye. Not more than 12 hours later, I'm getting out of a shower, and all of a sudden I notice a second bullseye on my side. So in those 2 spots, I got it, but thankfully, addressed it for the most part right away, but went the traditional medicine route, and it didn't resolve my issues. It was actually also an integrative medicine practitioner who we worked really closely with to help me detox. And I still feel like it never leaves completely. What I can say for sure, though, is that as I've personally made those changes in my nutrition, when we went from doing intermittent fasting and to keto to carnivore, each iteration improved those symptoms over time. But I know that today I also still suffer here and there with the repercussions of that, unfortunately.
It's a long process for some people. Some people it is, if you actually talk to the top Lyme doctors nowadays, they don't really worry as much about getting rid of the Lyme. It's more about getting your body able to fight it properly, getting your immune system working and working properly, not dysfunctional like mine with SIRS going wild and not doing my body any good. And so, I did everything. I did 9 months of 3 high power antibiotics taken simultaneously for 9 months. I did, you name it, every protocol, every parasite protocol, all the traditional medicine. I did all of that. I then did all the holistic stuff, whether it was, Cowden protocols, and I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying everything there is. Right now, the things that work for me are, diet, keep my diet right, will help keep inflammation down and pain down, and hyperbaric oxygen treatments. Those two things work pretty well for me, keeping things under control.
You mentioned before in terms of trying to stave off the calcification in your spine. Is that something that is exercise related that you're doing for that?
Yeah, I'm trying to strength train and flexibility, stretching and flexibility for that. Taking a lot of K2 to help keep calcification from happening. High dose K2. Yeah, I'm making sure I got good D3 levels as well along with that. It's pretty easy to do in Hawaii. It's a little tougher to do here in Wisconsin. But yeah, I've come to the realization that I'm never going to completely resolve. I mean, you can't take the calcium out of the neck vertebrae are fused. There's no going back from that. But if I can do everything I can to stave off any further progression, I'll be happy.
We know that none of this is easy, but we also applaud you for the way that you approach this and the fact that you're doing everything that person could possibly do, whereas so many people just oftentimes throw up their hands and say, well, these are just the cards that I'm dealt, nothing else I could do. But yet, I think this highlights not just dealing with your personal issues. I think this is what so many people need to hear and recognize, that we all have our own form of Lyme, if you will. We all have our issue that we need to deal with. And like, you can be the type of person that says, oh, well, I've tried this, I've tried that, nothing works, and just throw in the towel. Or you could take the approach that you are. It's like, it sounds like you're doing every single thing you could possibly do and exhausting every avenue. And I'm sure a lot of that is the engineer in you as well.
Yeah, I want to fix the problem. I'm going to keep trying. Like even recently, one of my tests came back with pretty high heavy metals. Arsenic, mercury. So we had a new reverse osmosis, water filter at our condo, which we didn't have one there, to make sure. And then it came down quite a bit. And I did some detoxing, and it came down into normal here this last time. So that helped. There's always like little layers to the onion. You got to, when it comes to this, because when your immune system is so kind of out of whack, things that your body normally can just deal with, detoxing and whatever, become an issue, and they kind of build up in the body, whether it's heavy metals, whether it's mold, which I'm also doing I'm doing the whole mold protocol right now too. There's just a lot of things that can build up that normally your body would deal with. And that's, I think, one of the reasons carnivore works well in these situations for my pain, was because plants have anti-nutrients, and those anti-nutrients have to be detoxed and getting rid of. I can add that extra level of inflammation that makes things worse. So yeah, you just gotta stick with it.
We honor your story, and that you're in this space, not just healing yourself, but also helping others to heal. I think that going through our own struggle gives us a layer of natural empathy, and understanding that it is a process, it is a journey. And I feel like it makes us better coaches. So for whatever reason it is that you do have to walk this journey, we honor the fact that you're staying the course and that you're helping other people in the process.
Well, thank you. And obviously I wish I didn't have it, but since I do, might as well do the best I can to help educate others, especially like Western Lyme, blot tests, how they're not accurate, and using other tests to, diagnose properly and that kind of thing.
That's super valuable. And I'm sure that somebody listening is right now saying, oh my gosh, I think that's me. And, now they have an opportunity to change their situation. Well, with that said, we want to be respectful of your time, but please let everybody know how they can connect with you, with Maria, find you guys, follow you.
The easiest is ketomaria.com. I set that up as like a landing page to get to everything. All of our social media links are at the bottom. You can get to our blog, you get to our support website, everything right from there.
Awesome.
You guys are the A team, and we'll make sure we link that in our show notes below. So guys, be sure to click on the show notes, head on over to ketomaria.com where you can connect with Maria and Craig. Thanks for being here today.